Ayubowan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the event, Future for All, Transforming Youth, Empowering the Future. Before we start our day's proceedings, let us all rise for the national anthem. Future for All, Transforming Youth, Empowering the Future. A forum where the aspirations of the youth beyond 2020 are addressed, discussed, shared, and debated. We'd like to welcome all of you present today for this event, Future for All, Transforming Youth, Empowering the Future. The youth of a nation are the trustees of posterity. The power of the youth is the commonwealth for the entire nation. That faces of young people are the faces of the past, our present, and our future. No segment in society can match the power, idealism, enthusiasm, and the courage of the young people. Today's youth plays a pivotal role towards changing the dynamics of politics. The present presidential election consists of 1.6 million new youth voters coming into the registry, and they sure are a decisive factor in the coming election. Today's youth base their decisions on facts, challenge the conventional beliefs, make decisions based on sound judgment. Hence, addressing the concerns of the youth and their needs are essential in the present dynamics of politics. Hence, with this objective in mind, this platform, Future for All, was created to answer the concerns of the present day's youth and to address and how they will play a pivotal role, and how the presidential aspirant, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, will address the concerns of the youth. Without much ado, let me now welcome Honorable Harshna Rajakaruna, a vibrant, young, dynamic politician who is also the current member of the Sri Lanka Parliament from the United National Party, representing Gampaha District, who is also the head of the youth movement for the presidential campaign, chairman of the Young Professionals Organization of the United National Party, to deliver the welcome address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Sajith Premadasa, presidential candidate, honorable members of parliament, honorable ministers, Mayoress Rose Senayaka, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the youth movement, along with the Young Professionals Organization, I would like to welcome all of you for this event, which is a special occasion where you have the chance to ask questions, interact with our presidential candidate, Honorable Sajith Premadasa. Why Sajith? I think the best part of Honorable Sajith Premadasa is that we have a golden opportunity to have a president who can relate to the youth. He's just 52 years old. Most of our South Asian leaders has to be at least over 70 or 75 to be the head of the state. And usually that's a retirement age. Usually with no respect, with no disrespect to our elders, usually they are most involved in religious activities. Being 52, I believe Honorable Sajith Premadasa has good 10 years to work for this country, to work for the betterment of this country, and with that energy, I personally believe that he can make the difference that we all hope for. It's a time for the new generation. It's a time for the youth. The trends have changed across the world. I can name few head of the states who are in their late 30s or 40s, early 40s. Jacinta Ardern from New Zealand was just 39 years old. The Qatar Emir Tamim Thani, 39 years of age. President Carlos from Costa Rica, 39 years old. Ireland Prime Minister Leo, 40. French President Emmanuel, 39. Justin Trudeau, 43. So I believe it's time for Sri Lanka to have a 52-year-old president. I don't want to take much of your time. This is an interactive session where you can ask questions directly online via SMS, WhatsApp. So please be kind enough to get involved as much as possible. And I believe it's a time that we need a young president. Thank you once again. I wish to welcome all of you to this special occasion. And I thank Honorable Sajith Premadasa to giving us the opportunity to have a special event like this. Thank you. All the very best.
Sajid Premadasa is the only son of the late Ranasinghe Premadasa, who was the second executive president of Sri Lanka. Sajid Premadasa began his political career in the 1990s from the rural district of Hambantota. In the year 2000, Sajid Premadasa entered parliament, amassing the highest number of votes in Hambantota and the highest preferential vote percentage in the entire country. He was appointed as the Deputy Minister of Health in the year 2001 and also rendered his services to the people as a Member of Parliament. After being appointed the Minister of Housing and Construction in the present government, he revived the Udagammana concept initially introduced by his father. Through the Udagammana concept, he has succeeded in providing more than 288 villages for the people. In order to further the constitutional duty of safeguarding Buddhism, Premadasa also initiated the Sasunata Aruna, Vevai Dagabai, Gamai Pansalai programs. As Minister of Cultural Affairs, Premadasa rendered yeoman services to all communities in the country, demonstrating a capacity to celebrate the diversity of the country while safeguarding its identity. However, as a result of the sycophancy of several members within his own party, his candidacy to contest for the upcoming presidential election was not confirmed even after the date for the presidential election was announced. This was Premadasa's response to the multitude of obstacles that were put in his way.
Ladies and gentlemen, as informed earlier, if you'd like to ask any questions from Honorable Minister, please feel free to SMS your questions to 077 3700 871. Now let me welcome the highlight of this evening, Honorable Sajid Premadasa, the presidential aspirant of the United National Party for the presidential election 2019, to address a gathering. He will be speaking to us today about his vision for Sri Lanka and how he hopes to build the country and what he envisions for the youth and development through democracy and how inclusive development for all. Let me welcome you, Honorable Minister.
Honourable Ministers, Honourable Members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be here to provide a unique opportunity for all those who are in attendance to probe and question in a critical manner the vision, the policies that I espouse, and provide you all with an open platform to engage with the future president, who will have a gigantic task of reinventing Sri Lanka, embarking on a path-breaking modern vision that would ensure sustainable prosperity, peace, and security for the people of our motherland. I don't intend to talk in an extensive manner. Rather, I would prefer to give this rare opportunity which is afforded to the people of our country to question, interrogate, probe into the motives and intentions and policies of decision makers of our country. So I shall constrain myself to those few words, and I invite you all to be at liberty to forward your questions. Thank you.
Our next session will be the Q&A session, which will be moderated by Mr. Louis Dias, a marketing evangelist. He holds an MBA from the University of Wales and a doctoral candidate of the University of Colombo. He's a fellow CIM and chartered marketer, author for the bestseller Strategic Marketing. He will be the moderator for the next session with Honorable Sajith Premadasa. We invite you all to raise all your questions via SMS to the number displayed on the screen, 077 3700 871. Any youth here in particular have any questions that you wish to be answered by the presidential candidate, and all your questions are mostly welcome, and he will be open to answering everything today. Over to you, Louis, for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shall we give the lovely lady a big round of applause? Thank you very much for being here, and it's wonderful to see a large audience. Honorable Minister, I have the privilege of asking you some questions and also taking some questions on WhatsApp, on SMS, some direct questions, and I'm trying to make these questions as tough as possible to our next President of Sri Lanka. The question of the hour, Honorable Minister, is, are you a dual citizen? Are you a dual citizen?
No, I'm not. And with respect, I would prefer that we move on to some more important topics, so that that would be of benefit for the people of our country.
It seems like the majority of your political work have been in the rural areas, donating houses and perhaps doling out welfare. Honorable Minister, we need a transformation for this country. And what's your vision for the presidency of our beautiful island nation?
Well, if one interprets the housing programs that I have enunciated and implemented as welfare programs, I think it's unfair and inaccurate. When I assumed office, our ministry did not have an iota of statistics with regard to the housing problem of our country. So the first 1.5 years was spent on gathering statistics related to the shelter issue in our motherland. And through the various surveys that were conducted with the participation of provincial secretaries, district secretaries, divisional secretaries, and all of the governmental officers at Grama Niladhari level, we found out that approximately 2.5 million people, 2.5 million family households suffered from issues related to shelter. So we embarked on reinventing the Model Village program, otherwise also known as the Village Reawakening program. And we focused on families, despite being citizens of our country, did not have their own house, their own piece of land, and they were the silent majority of Sri Lanka who were assetless. So the housing program, the Village Reawakening program, the Model Village program, it's a program that empowers those who are assetless to become people with capital strength. And this process of empowerment is done on a people participatory process. Some might have been misguided into thinking that these housing units are constructed by contractors. Not so. We have embarked on this housing program through participatory house building. This entails provision of land at the expense of the state and providing loans, grants, and at times mixtures of loans and grants for the land recipients to help them to build their own houses. So it's a participatory process. So the main objective is empower those who are assetless with land and housing as an asset. If I may just continue for a moment. It is a complete misrepresentation of facts that the model villages and the village development program is confined to this particular purpose. We have 5 presidential task force programs that have focused on each of the model villages in terms of conservation, promoting food security, eradicating chronic kidney disease with uncertain etiology, a program to eradicate alcoholism and smoking, and last but not least, a program to protect children in their villages. So it's a very integrated program, an all-encompassing program. Most of the people who follow news items, they only see a marginal snippet of what we do. In fact, this is a program which inculcates self-reliance, self-help, ability of the people in the communities to stand up for their rights, and more important of all, we help the people who are willing to achieve a better life, achieve a higher standard of living, and certainly empowering the citizens of this country who do not possess land, who do not have their own houses, providing them with land and a process whereby house building takes place. I believe it's a moral responsibility bestowed upon our government. So I would not dismiss the housing program as typical welfareism.
Thank you, Minister. In fact, we have some SMSs coming through right now. We're live on TV1 today. We also have partnered with Daily Mirror Online and Lankadeepa. Thank you very much to the viewers posting lots of questions as well. One key question that I want to consolidate, Honorable Minister, is given our population growth, Sri Lanka needs to create around 60,000 jobs per annum. So I want to take a question on WhatsApp, on the SMS platform, which asks, youth employment and jobs are a key challenge faced by youth of this country. What are your specific plans to address this issue? And I just want to add to that, what are your policies to encourage entrepreneurship, a broader SME sector, startups, venture creations, and social innovation perhaps? Is that in your agenda?
I think primarily we have to formulate far-reaching policy programs to address the youth unemployment issue. There has to be proactive government intervention in order to address this serious problem. First and foremost, I believe we need to have, as a government, pro-youth decision-making. We have to arrive at policy resultants in a meticulous manner through enlisting the support of policy experts, specialists, professionalizing the government decision-making program, so that we are able to gather all the requisite information related to youth unemployment, address the issue, go through a decision-making process whereby the most optimal policies are adopted. So in order to do so, we have to first and foremost, not only in the issue of youth unemployment, in all aspects of governance, we have to ensure professionalism, and we have to ensure that we do not have ad hocism in the decision-making process. So when you have experts and professionals in the decision-making process, we will come up with modern, innovative, enlightened ideas to address youth unemployment. Now, one of the first things that I have ascertained through my regular consultations with the youth of this country and policy experts and specialists is that we have to ensure that there is an environment that attracts foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment in terms of obtaining the requisite capital, utilizing such investments for the use of setting up factories and businesses, business institutions. It could be small enterprises, it could be medium-term enterprises, but we have to have a tax structure that attracts foreign direct investment. We often hear from various stakeholders that there are large amount of barriers to investment, a lot of red tape, huge swaths of impediments that block the free flow of investments into our country. So a regime of tax incentives and benefits that attract large capital inflows in terms of investment would enable the establishment and promotion of an entrepreneurial society, and the businesses that establish would be a good institution for the unemployed to get employed. So while devising policies and policy techniques that would address this important issue, it is also important and crucial that we embark upon skills training programs, empowering the youth with knowledge. One proposal that I'm studying right now is to establish centers of excellence in all our divisional secretary areas, which would promote information technology education, promote teaching of English linguistic skills, computer science education, and through such centers of excellence, we will have the youth given the opportunity of becoming skilled in the areas where there is employment potential. Of course, I can go on and on and on, but I think because of the time restrictions, I would confine my answer to that. And also, just lastly, we hope to establish a youth charter. A youth charter which would enable the youth of this country to have a social contract with the potential executive. This youth charter will contain the rights that all of the youth are yearning for. The potential president or the presidential candidate will sign up to a social charter, and this will basically be a social contract between the youth and the aspiring president. And soon after the victory that we will achieve, we shall enable the relevant officials to ensure that all stipulations and provisions in the Charter are transformed and translated into legal enactments so that there is actual legal teeth, actual legal support in order to fulfill and achieve the youth rights, which will be mentioned and stated in the Youth Charter. So those would be three of the policy instruments that I would embark upon to address youth unemployment.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. One question coming through from our Daily Mirror online readers at the moment is, in light of the recent events on national security, which is of the highest priority to most citizens and tourists of this country, should you be elected, what national security policy would you map out? And could you elaborate on your policy for national security?
I sincerely believe that the subject of national security should be looked at from a very broad perspective. From the details that I have ascertained as a student of international relations, and through my experience of interning in the US Senate for 2.5 years and working with the Foreign Relations Committee, Senate Armed Services Committee, and Senate Intelligence Committee. So through my educational experience, I would look at national security from a very broad perspective. If you look at the various interpretations and connotations that are given today by a lot of people in the political arena, they try to restrict national security into a singular area, military security interest. I honestly believe military security interest is one of the main priorities. But surely there are other aspects. You have to look at and focus on economic security, political security, social security. So there are several aspects and perspectives that one has to look at. As far as national security is concerned, and more particularly military security, I think we have to focus on a speedy modernization process for our armed forces, provide them with the most appropriate training in order to face up to the challenge of modern day terrorism, cyber security issues included. It is of great importance that we ensure that the morale of the armed forces are kept at a high level. We have to have a motivated security force that would be capable of facing the security exigencies that we would face in this modern day globalized world. Now, in addition to the military security aspect, I think we have to look at economic security. When, for example, our export destinations are confined to 2 or 3 countries, I'm talking about the vast majority of exports, and if they are confined to 2 or 3 countries, There I see a deep national security threat. We see economic vulnerabilities creeping in to our country. If we are unable to diversify our export destinations, 2 or 3 countries or groups of countries, they may be able to dictate our political agenda. It might enable them greater room to maneuver, to decide on the specifics of our national priorities. Now, similarly, we have to look at political social security. We have to ask the question, if our country is divided and extremism, xenophobia and discrimination is perpetuated, is that in the interest of national security? If certain sections of our society feel unsafe, if they feel insecure, if insecurity they feel is filtered down to national security and national insecurity, here I think is a major problem as far as our national security strategy is concerned. I think social harmony, togetherness, eradicating xenophobia, extremism, dogmatism would certainly enhance the national security of our country. So, basically speaking, we have to have a broad outlook, an overarching approach when we deal with national security. And I have to say, I think I possess the necessary knowledge and the acumen to have a modern-day national security strategy for our country.
Thank you. And we have some interesting messages coming up for you, Honorable Minister. One question that I want to amalgamate as well. This one's from Sampath, somewhere in the audience. Some say Sri Lanka needs a dictator. Is Sajith Premadasa a dictator? And I'd like to add to that, are you more of a populist leader, or would you consider yourself to be a transformational leader? How would you see yourself?
I think if there is a majority of people in our country who are keen on having a dictatorship, I think it is misguided and absolutely and totally detrimental to the interests of our motherland and to the people of our country. Most importantly, I would like to ask you, if the country is yearning for a dictator, why have a presidential election? Dictatorship is synonymous with destroying democracy. Having said that, I think we should have decisiveness, strength in resolve, determination, capacity to innovate, formulate modern innovative strategies, have out-of-the-box approaches to cater to problems that are yet to be resolved and have been stagnant, resolutions have been stagnant due to policies not being implemented. That certainly, I think, is the need of the hour. And I first would like to categorize myself as a Democrat, but a Democrat with strength in purpose, a Democrat with a vision, a Democrat who is extremely keen on achieving and on embarking on a path-breaking policy program that would ensure that our country goes through the next steps of modernization and prosperity is dawned onto all of the people living in our country.
Just trying to take as many questions as possible. Sir, the next question actually coming in from a lady in the audience as well. And I want to also add to that. Sadly, we still export our mothers and our sisters overseas to bring in the vital export revenue to this country. That we also have seen a lack of implementation in policy, especially in women's rights and the empowerment and the participation of women, be it in the corporate sector, be it in parliament. And what would you implement in terms of broader policies to ensure that women are inclusive and participative in the democratic process?
I think in terms of political participation, our present administration has done much, especially at the local government level. And I think we need to move on to the next levels of provincial and central government and far-reaching reforms that enable women a major role in politics and in political decision-making should be encouraged and promoted. And I shall do so with great vigor and interest. In the economic arena, I think modern innovative policy tools and instruments have to be formulated to ensure women's empowerment in the economic sector. And I believe in the household with the husband of the family and the wife, both being income earners through varying methodologies, would see an automatic upscaling of the income levels, an upscaling of the standard of living of the household through this twin partnership engaging in fruitful, constructive economic activity. I think when we talk of women, through positive gender mainstreaming, we would be able to achieve much. We have to promote entrepreneurship and gender equality among women, and we shall strive to do so vehemently through legislation and other forms of regulations and establishment of rules. And when we talk of women in society. We have to ensure that gender-based violence, sexual violence, discrimination at the workplace and in public spaces are all issues that we have to look at in a very serious manner if we are to promote the rights and needs of women in our society. I, as the President of Sri Lanka, will embark on a very proactive program, engage with women in all segments of society, listen to them, listen to their proposals and grievances. In fact, we have already commenced a listening outpost for women all over the country to put forth constructive proposals to be included in my manifesto, which would promote the rights and the needs of women. And I can assure you that we shall, without any hesitation, embark upon the most path-breaking approach to promoting women's rights and addressing the grievances that women face in their day-to-day activities.
Honourable Minister, thank you very much. That's very encouraging. There's one more question that comes from our Daily Mirror and Lankadipa online curated viewers. It's an interesting one, and it says that you've made a claim that you wouldn't live and stay in the president's house. And the comment goes on to say that there's been this promise made before by various other presidents in the past. And why should the public believe you, and as to whether you would practice that or whether it's just an election promise?
Quite simple. I practice what I preach.
Thank you very much. Let's come into something a little bit more important in terms of us, the youth of this country. Will Sri Lanka move up the Global Happiness Index if brand Sajith Premadasa is elected as the President of Sri Lanka?
Well, I'm happy that such a unique question was asked when you talk of the happiness index. There have been traditional indices that are universally used to show the various levels at which people live. I think universally accepted standards such as per capita income, gross national product. These are the traditional ways of ascertaining levels of prosperity in various nation states. But we all know that a new concept has arisen in Bhutan, where the gross national happiness of the people are now considered as a crucial indicator which guides governmental policy formulation and policy implementation. So I think it is crucial that rather than become hostage to statistics, universal formulae, we have to look at in a more surgical manner whether people living in our country are actually happy. And it is important that this new indicator, gross national happiness, is something that we are thinking about, of having as a main indicator that helps the government to be in touch with the people, that helps the government to ascertain the various needs, expectations, dreams of the people. And certainly I shall use this new technique that Bhutan is practicing right now in Sri Lanka, so that we become more aware of the micro details as far as the thinking of the people are concerned in our country.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Something that is close to your heart from the youth of this country. We were very disturbed last week when 6 jumbos were killed, and over 300 elephants die every year in Sri Lanka. And the human-elephant conflict continues to grow. Forest cover has reduced drastically. You yourself is a wildlife enthusiast. How do you plan to arrest some of these issues that surrounds our natural environment?
We have to have a multi-pronged approach to address the issues that you just mentioned. It is imperative that we embark on a very heavy tree planting program that enhances the forest cover of our country. This has to be done with purpose, with strength. There are so many disparate governmental organizations and agencies, bureaucracies, and several institutions in the non-governmental sector who have as their sole aim to improve the forest cover. I think it's important that we have a national program and a strategy where we bring together all of these interested parties under one umbrella and have a determined, target-oriented, time-tasked program to ensure that forest cover in our country is improved in the next few decades. You mentioned an important and crucial issue that is mostly prevalent in rural Sri Lanka, primarily in the wildlife buffer zone area, the human-elephant conflict. Both elephants and human beings have suffered from fatalities due to this persistent conflict and attrition that's taking place. I think the most important method, the proven method that ensures wildlife conservation is the people participatory conservation program. Ensure that buffer zone communities have a stake in the preservation of wildlife, fauna and flora, and wildlife species. This is the proven method, and I'm alarmed to say that this is yet to be practiced in a persistent and consistent manner in our country. So I would promote people participatory, community participatory wildlife conservation programs, which would ensure that the buffer zone communities specifically have a stake in the protection of our wildlife resources. In addition, I would also promote inclusion of wildlife conservation and environmental studies in our education syllabuses. I would love to have it as a subject which students and children will study from their small age, and right from the inception they will be taught and they will learn how to engage with wildlife, how to protect our environment, and how to ensure that protection of the wildlife is a national priority and that all citizens in this country are duty-bound to do so.
Thank you very much. I just want to amalgamate some questions coming in on the Daily Mirror online page as well. The issue of productivity in the government sector is something that the youth of this country would like to see a transformation in. And I'd like to just add to that some messages coming in as well. This is the manifesto time, Honorable Minister. There are lots of promises, and most of them are sometimes broken. We see a lack of implementation in policy, measuring performance, especially of the government, of each ministry. We can see that the US does that, the UK does that, and governments, progressive governments like Australia, where there are balanced scorecards developed. Malaysia has developed a blue ocean strategy for each ministry, so that every minister is accountable for every penny spent in their budget. How do you plan to eliminate the bureaucracy, levels of corruption, and improve the productivity, effectiveness, and efficiency of our public sector and the government?
First and foremost, I think in the past 4.5 years, I believe I have proven to many that I'm a person of action. So no one has to worry about the implementation part of government policies and programs. However, I fervently believe that in government, we have to set standards, and standards of excellence. The performance of each ministry and minister should and ought to be evaluated. Are the funds allocated to particular ministries are utilized to the fullest? If I may reveal statistics, if I'm permitted to do so right now, 2015, 16, 17, the fund utilization in my ministry was close to 99%. So the resources, the taxpayers' rupees that were allocated to my ministry were spent. And as you know, with the zero budgeting concept that is prevalent, any non-utilized funds cannot be put forward to the next year's budget. It goes back to the treasury. So I have proven in terms of the utilization of monetary resources that were provided to my ministry. Up to 2017, I have a 99% success rate. Of course, in 2018, with the 52-day debacle, the fund utilization dropped to 85%. Now, basically that will show you that my implementation techniques have achieved success. We have not misallocated the scarce resources, the taxpayers' funds. in times when we were in governance. So basically, I shall ensure that all ministries, at least the limited number of ministries that I propose to have, because we won't have a multiplication of ministries, we will have a number of ministries that are needed for the development and functioning of government and for the development of our motherland. I shall ensure that those ministries and ministers will adhere to the highest standards of efficiency, morality, and ethics. In terms of anti-corruption, time has come to ensure that anti-corruption processes are modernized and depoliticized, have the necessary legal teeth to act independent of political interference. There is a great necessity to promote and protect the independence of such institutions. And I can assure you that rules, regulation, legal enactments, legislation will be formulated to promote the objective of eradicating corruption and having corrupt-free governance in our country.
Thank you very much. There's a question actually from the audience once again. In terms of the digital transformation that we've seen, which has been discussed by the present government for the past 4 years, especially the youth of this country would like to see a very tech-savvy, smart concept to everything. And today, Honorable Minister, we talk about smart health, we talk about smart housing, we talk about smart living, everything is smart. There's new technologies that are being discussed like AI and nanotechnology. But the question that I have to you, sir, is how could you have perhaps baby boomer ministers lead the digital transformation of Sri Lanka? Shouldn't it be done by people who understand the subject?
When tasking responsibilities to ministerial personnel, I would have as my sole standard capability and efficiency and knowledge of the subject. I will have a meritocratic approach in terms of assigning duties and responsibilities. Knowledge of digital technology and the various modern concepts associated with new day thinking has to be championed, has to be implemented in a manner so that the maximum benefits accrue to the youth of our society. In line with that, I hope to initiate a presidential task force on promoting new ideas, digital technology, new innovations, modern policies and approaches. This will all come under a presidential task force which will champion this modern day thinking and ensure that there is speedy and appropriate implementation of those programs right at the grassroots level. The digital revolution should not be confined to a particular class or to a particular geographical region. Rather, I shall ensure that the implementation will be universal. It will be spread throughout the country. And it will impact beneficially on all sections of our society. So we will establish a presidential task force in promoting modern technology, digital technology, nanotechnology, all included, and many other modern approaches to create a greater value-added Sri Lanka.
Thank you. We have a few more minutes with the Honourable Minister. One question that this is for me, Honourable Minister. Brand Sajid Premadasa has gained some serious traction in the past 2 weeks. And you've come from nowhere and you're making some big noise. And from marketing terms, we would brand you as a star. But we've also seen the previous government lacking in the function of marketing and promoting some of the initiatives that your government has done, as well as perhaps maybe even fallen short in promoting and communicating to the youth and the public of this country as to what has been done. How would you improve that?
I don't think there is a novel approach to improve one's marketing aspect. I think if one embarks on a journey with an honest purpose, pure intentions, and in the implementation aspect, that you reach the grassroots level, be it in the rural classes or among the middle classes, that will gain traction with the people. That would be the marketing aspect of my system of governance. There would be no special approach that would ensure that the policies that we implement gain greater popularity and people's acceptance. If what you do is done with a real and honest purpose, if you show character and strength in implementing your work programs, and you do so with the participation of people and stakeholders, you're virtually there. You're a winner.
Thank you. On a little bit more serious topic on education, this has been a topic that has come through some of our curated questions on Daily Mirror as well, and we'd like to thank our TV1 viewers at this point as well, watching us live. Honourable Sir, on education, our education system is prescribed to be a little archaic at the moment. We've seen that nothing much has changed in the past 25 to 30 years. We've heard you talk about IT and English. But today the world has moved into STEM education, vocational training. How do we ensure that every youth that comes out of school, even if they are unable to do their A-levels, how can they find a job? How can we skill them? How can we reskill them? And how do we ensure that they are partakers in the economic prosperity of Sri Lanka?
In this regard, I would suggest just look at what's happening beyond our borders in India. With their excellent IITs and IIMs, they produce youth and citizens with great capability and acumen. And for them, unemployment is not an issue, because there's a readily available market for those who are capable and rich in talent. But they have to go through a modern, up-to-date curriculum, a curriculum that suits the modern age. The necessary skills are bestowed upon the students that are in line with current labor market expectations and labor market demands. So when we talk of education, education has to be of very high standards when it comes to teaching, high standards when it comes to appropriateness. And I take the IITs and the IIMs as an excellent program. If replicated in our country, would be one of the major programs that would address the educational needs of the children and youth of our country.
Thank you. A little serious on this topic. There's one question that's come today for the SMS group as well. In terms of law and order, it says, "Sir, we have law, but we don't have order. How would you establish order?"
First thing that I would do is a complete universal depoliticization program, whereby those institutions that are bestowed, designated with the responsibility of promoting law and order, that they continue to function independently, devoid of political influence and interference. This, I believe, is the crux of the matter. In addition, I think security force personnel, the police, and others who are tasked with the task of promoting law and order has to be better trained. We need to modernize the various institutes that train our police and security force personnel. They have to be motivated. They have to be rewarded when they have performed. Performance-based rewards is something that would be a major part of my manifesto, not only in the law and order arena, in the whole public policy decision-making arena. More importantly, I think politicians and decision-makers should follow a kind of a hands-off policy when it comes to law and order institutions. We should allow the relevant officers to conduct their duties and responsibilities in an unprejudicial, impartial manner. Once the political interference and political influencing stops, I think most of the problems that we are facing in terms of law and order will be resolved. The relationships that most politicians and political decision makers have, somewhat of an illicit relationship, that acts to the detriment of our society. And we should ensure that there is greater transparency, greater openness when it comes to law and order issues. And we should give the fullest freedom to all the officers who are engaged in this task to carry out their duties in a manner devoid of political influence and political directives.
Thank you. One question on foreign policy. We don't dispute the fact that you have an impeccable knowledge of the rural community, how the village works in Sri Lanka. If there's one person that we can look up to at the moment, out of the 225, we believe as the youth of this country that you possess that knowledge of how the rural economy works. However, there's a question from the audience that talks about foreign policy. How are you going to manage international relations and manage the strong bargaining powers of that of USA, China, and India?
I can tell you I shall certainly not follow my predecessors in selling out the country. I think I possess unique credentials in formulating a rational pro-Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka first external relations policy. And as you may have seen, I am a person who's not inclined towards conditionality in my politics. I think the whole country saw that in the nomination process. No strings attached, no conditions attached. Similarly, I shall follow a strong foreign policy based on our strengths. Some might say that we lack the requisite resources, but all forget the fact that Sri Lanka is strategically located as a country, and our strategic location can be used as our strength to bargain with our international partners. And let me assure all of you that any pacts or agreements, be it political, security, trade, so on and so forth, will be arrived at only from a position of strength, and with all agreements and pacts, we shall do a cost-benefit analysis. If the benefits to the country outweigh the costs, we will go ahead with it. The prime moving factor for decision-making would be national interest and not family interest.
We've noted that, sir. In terms of healthcare, there's a message, an interesting one that has come through from the audience today. Is there something wrong with the doctors and the healthcare system in Sri Lanka? That most VIPs go to Singapore for treatment.
I think our healthcare system is quite healthy, and I for one has always used the healthcare system that is existent in our country. However, the allocation of resources as a percentage and a proportion of GNP for the health sector has to be enhanced. It has to be improved. I think greater resources have to be allocated both to the preventive sector and to the curative sector. There are large shortcomings and drawbacks, anomalies in the rural preventive healthcare system and structure. For example, there is a great need for the establishment of public health midwife buildings. They are extremely crucial to ensure that the nutritional levels of mothers and children are kept at a high level through various intervention programs that are implemented through the multiplicity of MOH offices that are established in the country. So I just mentioned one aspect of resource scarcity that has impacted detrimentally on the health sector. However, as a government, we have, in the past few years, allocated a significant amount of resources, and we have achieved. We have achieved in lowering the drug prices, the prices of drugs and medical instruments. We have ensured that as a government we have disentangled and dismantled the drug mafia of our country, which has automatically led to a reduction in prices of medicinal equipment and drugs. So we have achieved somewhat, to some extent, but there's much more that's needed to be done. And I think greater allocation of resources are an indispensable requirement to ensure the health and well-being of the people of our country.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Yes.
Go ahead. Sri Lankan Health Services.
So when you said that, were you referring to government hospitals like Ragama and Kalbovina or the private hospitals like Nabaruk and Nashik?
I have been treated by both aspects. I've gone to the state sector and I've also gone to the private sector.
One of final questions that we'd like to ask you, sir, this evening. Thank you very much for spending some time with the youth of this country. Interesting question by my friend. Where would you dedicate your time during the first year of your tenure as the President of Sri Lanka? What would be the five key strategic priorities that you would spend most of your time, most of your energy to try and resolve?
I think that's an unfair question. I'll tell you why. As the President of the country, I cannot confine myself or prioritize just simply 5 areas or 5 topics. That would be very unfair.
But 5 burning issues, sir? 5?
Well, if I may generalize, I would have as my priority, in a general sense, to uphold the economic rights of the people of our country, to uphold the social rights of the people of this country, to uphold the civic and human rights and political rights of the people of this country. Now, that entails a vast tract of the policy agenda. Now, this moves on, this goes beyond a singular particular subject area. So, I would say a country that engineers, garners, and champions growth. Growth that is multifaceted. Growth that encompasses all segments of society. Achieving the fruits of growth. Inclusive growth. Growth that does not discriminate, where the benefits and fruits of growth are shared by all. Inclusive growth, shared prosperity. Promote a modern Sri Lanka, modern in all of its aspects. And to surmise, I would say that I would protect the economic, political, social, civic, and human rights of the people of our country.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for spending your evening with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to hand over the proceedings now to the beautiful lady.
So before we wrap up for this evening, let me thank Honorable Sajith Premadasa for being here today and for making it a very insightful and a very informative session. I think most of the questions that we, the young, wanted and had doubts in our minds, I believe was answered. Something that really triggered my mind was the minister's answer that he gave on law and order, that politicians should follow a hands-off approach and that we must drive a country based on policy. I think that is the clear need of the hour, that we need a policy framework and how we will develop our country based on clear principles and policy. So I'd like to thank our moderator for this evening, Mr. Louis Dias, for moderating a very effective Q&A session, and also to Daily Mirror and TV1 for being our media partners, and to the organizers of this event, and to the chairman of the youth movement, Honorable Harshan Rajakaruna, and his team for putting up this event. And let me also thank all the ministers and the officials that were here. But lastly, not forgetting our audience and the young who are present here today. Let me end the day with a small quote. If you must dream of the world you want to live in, dream out loud. Youth are the solution, not the problem. Nothing about us without us is for us. Signing off, your MC for the evening, I'm Lihini Fernando. Have a good evening and drive safe. Thank you.